Genesis chapter 14 verses 18 to 24. This is after Abraham had won a great battle, and those days when you won a battle, you also took home what is called the booty. And when Abraham was returning from the battle, the Bible says, then Melchizedek, the king of Salem, brought out bread and wine. He was the priest of God Most High. And he blessed him and said, blessed be Abraham of God Most High, possessor of heaven and earth. And blessed be God Most High, who has delivered your enemies into your hand. And he gave him a tithe of all. Now the king of Sodom said to Abram, give me the persons and take the goods for yourselves. But Abram said to the king of Sodom, I have raised my hand to the Lord God Most High, the possessor of heaven and earth, that I will take nothing from a thread to a sandal strap, that I will not take anything that is yours, lest you should say, I have made Abram rich, except only what the young men have eaten, and the portion of the men who went with me, Anna, Eshcol, and Mamre, and let them take their portion. Abraham had fought the battle with 318 or so men from his family, slaves or house helps, and had won this battle. The victory belonged to him. He fought, he won, and everything he got belonged to him. But when he was coming out, he saw Melchizedek, the priest of God, holding bread and wine representing the communion, and came into covenant with him and served him with communion. And afterwards, Melchizedek did not ask for anything, but Abraham took a tenth of everything he had made and gave it to Melchizedek. If you're going to be faithful with money, the first thing you have to do is to consider yourself a steward and your money as God's resources. A steward is a caretaker, somebody who has been entrusted with something. And your money must not just be seen as yours, but it is God's resources. I know you work for your money, thank God. I know you work very hard. I know you get up probably at 4 o'clock in the morning, get to the office, work very hard and sweat and make your money. But what if you didn't get up? What if in the morning you wanted to get up, your brain said you should get up, but your waist didn't want to get up, or your hand didn't want to move, or your tongue had stuck to the roof of your mouth? What if you went to the office and you lost the memory of everything you've learned? So you work hard, but there are so many aspects of your wealth you didn't control. That's God's part. And so, although you work hard, which is commendable, without him giving you life in the first place, you have nothing to boast of. So this is the attitude we should have. I am a steward. That means that whatever comes into my hand, although I fought for it, like Abraham fought for it, primarily it belongs to God. And whatever I have, although it's in my name, it's God's resources. When we have that mentality, then we can have a good attitude towards our money. Otherwise, when money comes into your hand, you will go crazy. You think you got it by yourself? You think it's because of your smartness? Yes, to a large extent, because you are smart, you are inventive, you are creative, you started a business, it's working, you pay the price, you sweated, and you've gained the money. And that's true. For Abraham, he went to battle, he put his own life on the line, he could have been killed. That's true. And then a man shows up, he didn't know, Melchizedek, priest of God, and Abraham gives him the tithe of all. Why did Abraham do that? Melchizedek didn't fight. Abraham remembered that everything he had, his life, and his property belong to God. Consider yourself a steward and your money as God's resources. Secondly, determine to faithfully honor God with your tithes and offerings. I don't know why we should even teach on this again, because I think when it comes to tithe and offerings, we should be so faithful we don't even need to go back and talk about it again. And it's not because we are preachers, that's why we teach tithes and offerings. Is the Bible. I must honor God with my tithe just like everybody else. I must be faithful. When God gives me a victory, I must give him his portion. I must acknowledge that whatever I have belongs to God. My strength belongs to him. My sweat belongs to him. My praise belongs to him. My ideas belong to him. Whatever I have belongs to him. And so he says, set apart a portion that belongs to God. You know, when it comes to paying our taxes, which most of the time is more than 10%, they deduct it even at source. Payee is called payee. Pay as you earn. As you are earning is going. And depending on which salary bracket you are in, it could be more than 1/3 of your earnings is gone. Nobody complains. God says, well, you've given to Caesar what is Caesar's. Your taxes. Now give to God what is God's. That one too has become a quarrel. And then we fight, and then people are, this month is hard. Now, can you ever say to the government, this month is hard, so I won't pay tax? No. You give without thinking twice. The same way, I don't consider my tithe as part of my salary. When I think of my salary, I don't calculate tithe into it. It's not in the equation. That is God's portion. God's portion is not your portion. It's not even yours to take out to give to God. It's God's from the beginning, and you don't rob him from it. If you want God to bless you and give you true riches, he says he's going to test you with money. Have you passed the money test? Or you have stolen God's money? People say, but I don't know what the money is used for. Well, I'm not sure whether Abraham knew where Melchizedek came from and where he was going. But he gave, because Abraham said, it doesn't belong to me anyway. It's God's portion, and I give it to God. And it is after Abraham started this process that the blessing started following him. You read later on that Abraham became exceedingly rich. His children had the same blessing. When Jacob was in trouble, it was when he made the vow of the tithe that things started changing for him. Because if you give God his portion, he will give you his portion. If you give him a tenth, he doesn't give you a tenth. He gives you good measure, press and shake it together and running over. God doesn't give you equal what you give him. He gives you far more than you give to him. Giving the tithe is not something you do once in a while when the pastor preaches about it. It's a covenant. I think as far as I can remember, since I was probably about 18 or 19, I've tithed faithfully. I don't need anybody to preach that to me. And I didn't start because I was a pastor. But I realized this is God's principle. What I have belongs to him. I work hard, yes, but it all belongs to him. And when he gives the increase, I must make a declaration to myself and to heaven that I recognize God as the source of my life. Be a faithful tither. If God cannot trust you in your tithe and you cannot be faithful in your tithe, God will not give you his true riches. The way to really enjoy life with no sorrows added is to be faithful to God, and he'll be faithful to you. Faithfulness with money Third, don't grab greedily for quick monetary rewards. When Abraham had his breakthrough, he had the money, he gave the tithe to Melchizedek. Then the king of Sodom, another king, came and says, hey Abraham, listen, keep all the money, all the things you got from this battle, keep it. And we recognize you fought very hard because you defended all of us. Keep the money. And Abraham said something that is interesting. He said, I have made a vow to God that I'm not going to take anything that does not belong to me, so that somebody will one day say they made Abraham rich. So he has given the 10th to Melchizedek. Now he's left, if we say, with a 90%. Legally, it is his. But he also knows that the thing he collected from the battle, they belong to the kings that the enemy had already dispossessed. So he actually went to fight to restore property to those people. So he said, well, I fought and I risked my life, but I've given the 10th to God, but the rest of it, I know originally it belonged to you, king of Sodom, so take yours. The only thing I ask for is that those people who worked for me and fought for me, pay them their wages. As for me, leave me alone, because I don't want you one day to say, you made me rich. Abraham knew he would be rich, and he didn't want the king of Sodom to get the credit. If you know anything about the king of Sodom, he was the king of Sodom, which later was the Sodom and Gomorrah we know. So he wasn't really a righteous person. And Abraham didn't want an unrighteous king to one day claim that they made him prosperous. So he said, it's yours. I redeemed it for you. Take it. That shows you a man who is not greedy for money. But it also shows you a man who is concerned for his workers. He says, pay my workers, give them what is theirs, and take the rest. So the 10% goes to Melchizedek. The bulk of it goes back to the people whose property he had redeemed, and the rest goes to service his company, to pay the wages and salaries of his staff. And Abraham goes on with his life just to believe God. I think he gives us a model of how to handle money. God is able to take care of you. Third area of faithfulness is faithfulness in other people's property. The best example is Joseph. We know Joseph and all that he did, a great dreamer who got into trouble with his brothers, sold into slavery, later rescued from prison, interprets dreams, overnight becomes prime minister. Phenomenal story. But before he got there, listen to how the Bible describes his sense of responsibility. Genesis chapter 39, verse 8 to 9. As you know, when he got into the house of Potiphar, he was given oversight over the house of Potiphar. And then over time, the Potiphar's wife started making moves on him. There's a whole lesson to learn from there. There are some men who can't stand that. One woman comes and says, oh, I like your tie. And all of a sudden your brain just goes haywire. All the screws are unplugged. All right. But he refused. So let's listen to what happens. But he refused and said to his master's wife, look, my master does not know what is with me in the house, and he has committed all that he has to my hand. There is not one greater in this house than I. Remember, he started as a slave. Look at now his position. Nor has he kept back anything from me but you, because you are his wife. How then can I do this great wickedness and sin against God? Faithfulness with other people's properties, including their wives.